Shabbat shalom, Selene. Shabbat shalom. Shabbat shalom, Christina. There you go. Shabbat shalom, Samaya. What do I? Shabbat shalom, Keisha. Shabbat shalom, Dave Wilson. Come on in the room. And while we're waiting on people to come in the room, turn with me to the book of Romans. Come on in the room. Shabbat shalom, Casey. Shabbat shalom, Miss D. While we're waiting on people to come on in the room, I'll go ahead and get us started in prayer. I'm going to try not to get on y'all nerves too long today. Let us go to Yah in prayer. Abba Yas, in the name of Yahushua, we come, we thank you, we praise you for your grace, for your mercy, for your love, for your compassion. We thank you for so many wonderful things that you bestow on us in spite of us. Yahuwah, we thank you for another holy Shabbat, that a few of your humble children can get together to study your Torah, so that we can become not only learners of your word, but doers of your word. So we ask that Jeffrey right now would decrease and that you would increase. For I sit here before your people, recognizing the fact that there's failure in me, but I know there's no failure in you. And I know that as long as you're in control, everything is going to be all right. It's these and other blessings we ask and pray for in the name of Yahushua ben Yahuwah. And with that, we say hallelujah. Hallelujah. Shabbat shalom, Sister Woodson, Sandra Woodson. Shabbat shalom. It's good to see you in here with us today. I'm not going to try to get on y'all's nerves too long. Today, I want to talk to you on the subject of a work of transformation in your life. A work of transformation in your life. A work, Shabbat Shalom, Mia, of transformation in your life. And my subtopic today would be removing the leaven from your life. Removing the leaven from your life. Shaul the apostle said in the book of Romans, chapter 12, that's where we're going to be. Romans, the 12th chapter, beginning with that first verse. Shaul the apostle said in this book, in this 12th chapter of this book, beginning with this first verse, I beseech you, meaning I exhort you, I strongly urge you, brethren, by the mercies of Elohim. In other words, in view of Elohim's mercy that he has extended to Yasharel, his elect, as well as those who come to him by faith in our King Yahushua, that he might have mercy upon all, that ye present your bodies a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable unto Elohim, which is your reasonable service. In other words, in view of Yah's mercy upon us, offer yourselves as a sacrifice, living and set apart for Yah. Not only will this please him, but it is the only logical and reasonable thing to do after he has put so much work into our redemption. He put a lot of work into our redemption, where he has shed his own blood, sweat, and tears to restore his people through a renewed covenant by way of a blood sacrifice. I'm going to say that again. He has put in a lot of work as it pertains to the redemption of his people, where he has shed his own blood, sweat, and tears to restore us through a renewed covenant by way of blood sacrifice. Now, when we think of sacrificial offerings, one of the first things that should cross our minds is blood. Sacrifices were bloody. They were messy. And it was a lot of work. With most sacrifices, it involved a cutting. And there was a certain way to cut. There was a certain way the pieces, after being cut, had to be laid and placed on the altar, which was, and it was also a specific way that the priests had to even handle not only the sacrifice, but the blood of the sacrifice. Do you hear what I'm saying? So needless to say, that to offer a sacrifice is a grueling process. It is work that requires blood, sweat, and tears. So when Shaul says here to offer yourselves as sacrifices, he is telling you to put in the bloody work that it takes and requires and prepares you to be in the presence of Yahuwah. Because we just can't present him with just any kind of sacrifice. We can't just come to him any kind of way and assume that he will be pleased with what we're offering. We must remember that the sacrifice had to be set apart from the rest and inspected, just like they did Yahushua when he was arrested and separated from the rest of the disciples on that Passover evening. And he was inspected when they carried him from judgment hall to judgment hall, and both Herod and Pilate found him to be without spot or blemish. Pilate said with his own mouth, after inspecting him, that I find no fault in this man, before he had him whipped and crucified. Therefore, if you're going to offer yourselves as an offering unto Yah, then you and I must inspect ourselves for the spots and the blemishes, which are sores and scars that show signs of sickness, such as sin sickness. Am I making any sense to anybody? We got to search ourselves. We got to inspect ourselves and be willing to cut out and cut off from our lives those things that must be sliced, diced, fried, and laid to the side, which means that we must search ourselves and be real with ourselves concerning the sin that is in our lives. Even those deep, dark secrets that we don't even want to think about, much less talk about. I'm talking about those blemishes that we buried and said that we were taken to our grave. And I know, just by looking at myself, I know that many of us hate to sacrifice. We hate to make sacrifices. We hate to be the sacrifice because it cuts. And it hurts. It's painful. But we need to understand that it's very necessary. But before we can even get to the point of being a living sacrifice, we must first be willing to go through the pain of consecration and separation from the world. I'm going to say that again. Before we can even think about becoming a living sacrifice, we must be willing to go through the pain of consecration and separation from the world. The function of consecration is the act of setting apart or dedicating something or someone for Yah's use. In the Torah, or what folk call the Old Testament, the temple and all the sacred objects that were in it were consecrated. As a matter of fact, I can show you better than I can tell you. Let's look in 2 Chronicles chapter 7. Let's go to 2 Chronicles chapter 7. We'll pick it up around verse 1. I'm going to show you that not only the temple, but the objects and the people involved in it were all consecrated unto Yahuwah's use. Look what it says in 2 Chronicles 7. We'll pick it up at verse 1. It says, now when Solomon had made an end of praying, the fire came from heaven and consumed the burnt offering and the sacrifices. And the glory of Yahuwah filled the house. Y'all see that? And the priests could not enter into the house of Yahuwah. Why? Because the glory of Yahuwah had filled Yahuwah's house. Verse 3, and when all the children of Israel saw how the fire came down and the glory of Yahuwah upon the house, they bowed themselves with their faces to the ground. Y'all see that? They bowed themselves with their faces to the ground upon the pavement and worshiped and praised Yahuwah. Upon the house, they bowed themselves with their faces on the ground upon the pavement and worshiped and praised Yahuwah, saying, for he is good and his mercy endure forever. I wonder how many of y'all can say that today, that you know through your own personal worship experience that Yahuwah is good and his mercy endure forever. If you know Yah is good, I need a witness on here. Somebody just say he's good. And don't say it just to be saying it. Say it because you know it for a fact that he's good. He's been good to you. In spite of you, he's good. He's functional. It says, look what it says here in the text. Verse 4, then the king and all the people offered sacrifices before Yahuwah. And King Solomon offered a sacrifice of 22,000 oxen and 120,000 sheep. Y'all see that? Now pay attention to this. So the king and all the people dedicated the house of Elohim. Verse 6, and the priest. Now that word dedicated that we just read, dedicated, consecrated. They dedicated and consecrated the house of Elohim. And the priest waited on their offices. The Levites also with instruments of music of Yahuwah. So not only the house, but the priests, the Levites, and the musical instruments were all consecrated and dedicated for the use of Yahuwah. And it says here, which David, the king, made, talking about the music, referring to the Psalms, to praise Yahuwah. Why did David do that? Because his mercy, come on somebody, endureth forever. I like saying that because it's true. His mercy endureth forever. Verse 7 says, Solomon then consecrated the central area of the courtyard in front of Yahweh's temple. He offered burnt offerings there because the bronze altar could not hold all the burnt offerings and sacrificial fat. Do y'all see that? Couldn't hold it. Verse 8, also at that same time, Solomon kept the feast 7 days, and all Yasharel with him, a very great congregation, from entering in, what is that? What is that in yours? Hamath, unto the river of Mitzrayim. And in the 8th day, they made a solemn assembly, for they kept the dedication of the altar 7 days, and the feast 7 days. And on the 23rd day of the 7th month, he sent the people away into their tents, glad and merry in heart, for the goodness that Yahuwah has showed unto David and to Solomon and to the house of Israel, his people. So you see, everything that was dedicated had to be consecrated. If you're going to be a living sacrifice, if you're going to be an offering presented to Yahuwah, you have to be dedicated, consecrated, and dedicated. Let's turn to Leviticus 27. Let's look at around verse 26 through 28. What's up, Josh Briscoe? Shabbat Shalom. Leviticus 27, 26 through 28. Look what it says. You ready? He says, you may not dedicate a firstborn animal to Yahuwah. Why? Why can't we dedicate the firstborn? For the firstborn of your cattle and goats already belong to him. Verse 27. However, you may buy back the firstborn of a ceremonial unclean animal by paying the priest assessment of its worth plus 20%. I'm not even great fuss with y'all about that, the 20%. It is what it is. And it says, if you do not buy it back, the priest will sell it at its assessed value. Verse 28, however, anything specially set apart, meaning consecrated, for Yahuwah, whether a person, so see, people can be consecrated and dedicated, set apart, an animal or family property, must never be sold or bought back. Anything devoted in this way has been consecrated or set apart as holy. It belongs to Yahuwah. Samaya and I was talking today about all the people who dedicate their children when they're babies to Yahuwah, and then they don't follow through. They don't live by the covenant they made with Yah when they dedicated their child. They don't train them up in the way they should go. They don't put the right things in them. Instead, they put rap in them. And instead of putting scripture in their hand, they got to put the highest pair of Jordans on their feet. And so we don't even realize that the things that happen to our children while they're out here, the calamities that come upon them, we never tie it to the fact that we gave them to Yah and then we took them back. Once something has been given over to Yah, set apart and given over to Yah, it belongs to Yah. Once you set that child or dedicate that child to Yah, it is your job, mother, it is your job, father, to train up that child in the way it should go, which is Torah is the way it should go. So when they are old, they will not depart from Torah. They will not depart from the law, statutes, and commandments of the kingdom. If I'm making any sense, somebody say you make sense. So we see, if you're going to be an offering unto Yah, then we must be consecrated and dedicated for his use. So you want to be an acceptable sacrifice because he can't use an unclean one. That is ceremonial unclean, which means that you can't live outside of covenant with him and trample his laws and feast days and commandments and present yourself spotted up and tattooed in sin. I think I'm going to say that again. I know I'm probably putting y'all to sleep because many of you probably not interested in this, but just for those who are, I'm going to say this one more time. You can't live outside of covenant and be with him at the same time. You can't live outside of covenant with him and trample his laws, his statutes, his commandment, and his feast days, and present yourself to him spotted up and tattooed in sin. I hope I make a sense to somebody. So you must be willing to come to him fully exposed. I know you wanted to bury those blemishes. I know you wanted to take them to your grave, but you must come to him fully exposed. If we confess our sin, scripture says he's faithful and just to forgive our sin and to cleanse us, but he can't cleanse you if you won't bring it to him. You have to come to him fully exposed so he can deal with it. And you can go through the stripping. That's what I call it, the stripping. Yah has to strip you of those things that he cannot use. And he will cut you, just like a surgeon, to remove the cancer from your life, to get rid of all the worldly dross that has attached itself to you, or maybe you've attached yourself to them. But either way, the cancer has to go. But he will at the same time, while he's operating, begin to replace those unclean things with his righteousness. He'll get rid of the wretchedness and replace it with his righteousness, with things that he can use. Does anybody hear what I'm saying? If you can hear what I'm saying, say, yes, I do. Yes, I do. The text says that no person set apart, this last little bit, for destruction may be bought back. No person set apart for destruction may be bought back. Such a person must be put to death. So we want to get rid of the cancer. Because if we don't get rid of the cancer is going to get rid of us. No person set apart for destruction. I want to be set apart for Yah, not set apart for destruction, may be bought back. Such a person must be put to death. So one way or the other, there's going to be a death of the carnal man. And either he's going to be put to death by you with Yah's help, or he's going to be put to death by Yah's hand where there is no help for the wicked. Let's turn to John 17. We'll pick it up around 16, since we're talking about being consecrated and dedicated, set apart. Let's see what also contributes to our consecration before the dedication. John 17, we'll pick it up at 16. We're going to jump. I hate doing this, but we're going to jump in the middle of Yahushua's conversation with the Father. Look what he says. John 17:16. They are not of the world. Who's not? My disciples, my students, my assembly. They are not of the world, even as I am not of the world. So, Father, this is what I need you to do. Sanctify them through thy truth. How? Through thy truth. How? Through thy truth. Thy word is true. That's what he says. Sanctify them through thy truth. Thy word is truth. Verse 18, as though you have sent me into the world, even so I have also sent them into the world. Verse 19, and for their sakes I sanctify myself, that they also might be sanctified through the truth. I'm so glad Yahushua imparts or imputes his righteousness unto us. He sanctified himself in order that we might be sanctified for Yah's use. And he used the truth to do it. This is why the Bible says, man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word which is true that proceeds out of the mouth of Yahuwah. Verse 19, and for their sakes I sanctify myself, that they also might be sanctified through the truth. So when Shaul says in Romans, present yourself holy and acceptable. You have to turn back to Romans. He's saying that your life as the offering has to be Kodesh, meaning holy. Your life has to be Kodesh coupled with righteousness. You can't just be set apart, but you got to be set apart and righteous. Remember, Kodesh or holy in the Hebrew has a dual meaning. It can mean holy as in set apart for Yah's use and walking in righteousness, walking by his commandments, or you could be set apart unto prostitutes, meaning you are not holy unto Yah, but you are set apart. You are holy unto idols, such as false religions. And there are many who are set apart unto false messiahs. And all are set apart unto Satan himself. That's not the holy Shaul is talking about when he says, present your body as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable. But he's talking about the high end of holiness that is always coupled to the righteous standards of Yah, that is always coupled to Yah's righteous standards for our living. Am I making any sense to anybody? That's the only sacrifice that is acceptable unto Yah. You need to hear me. That is the only sacrifice that's acceptable unto Yah. Showing up on Sunday morning and acting a fool for an hour or two in church and coming out talking about praise you know who. That's not the high end of holiness. In fact, that's the low end of holiness. You have to be holy and righteous in order to be acceptable unto Yah. So the way we are to present ourselves as living sacrifices is by living set apart lives for Yah's use. You got to live a set apart life for Yah's use. The other day, I was contemplating the commemoration of Passover and unleavened bread, which we have been celebrating this week. And I remember thinking that Yah is so awesome that he fixed it so that by keeping his feast days at the appointed times actually prepares us to be in his presence. I'm going to say that again. Yah is so awesome. He is such a magnificent teacher that I realize that by us keeping his feast days at their appointed times, it is actually preparing us to be in his presence. Now, it's only been a couple of years since our congregation transitioned out of Christianity and started walking in covenant. So we still have a lot to learn. And we still got a lot of growing to do, which means we're going to make some mistakes. We're still going to fall short in some areas. And hopefully, after trial and error, we learn to get it right to the best of our ability. Even as I examine some of the things that we did or did not do this week, and thought about how could we have done better, or where did we fail Yah in this process, a couple of things that really stood out with me is we have to do our due diligence to be more detailed in what Yah has said for us to do. Some of us, because we're not geared in this yet, some of us, I know it without even saying anything, was halfway through a burger before we realized we weren't supposed to be eating bread. Some of us had already finished off a bag of chips before we thought about how the chips were processed and made in the first place. There were things that we did. Some of us had issues this year that we didn't have last year. Last year, when we first kept unleavened bread, it was easy for us to remove all the leaven from the house. Why? Because nobody lived here but me and Samaya and Jesselyn. Now, this year, we have grown-ups in our house and more children. So we had to deal with the dilemma of, do we get the leaven out the house because we can't force them to partake, or do we leave the leaven in the house? So what I've learned is, and this is the conclusion of that matter, now if you're living with somebody else, you don't have a choice. But if it's your house, even if other folk are staying with you, your house is under covenant. So you just explain to them, the leaven is leaving the house. If you don't like it, you can leave too. Or if you want it that bad, you can eat it outside. But because Yah blessed us with this home and we're walking in covenant with him, we won't make this mistake again by choosing you over him. So we're learning. We're feeling our way through. So don't beat yourself up because this is trial and error. But as we participate in the process, it prepares us to be in his presence. So I think another thing we can do better, we can better plan for next year so we don't miss a beat. Like today, beginning this evening, I believe is first fruit offerings. And we need to be better prepared for that. So, like I said, we just came out of it. We're still making the transition and we're learning through trial and error. So, but we are going to work to try to get it right to the best of our ability. But anyway, like I was saying, keeping the feast actually prepares you to be in Yah's presence mentally, physically, and spiritually. Think about it. Think about it for a second. Keeping Passover is a time of renewal, reflection, and redirection. Think about that. As we prepare for Passover, that is a time for renewal, reflection. Look at what Yah has been and done in your life, and look at what you have done pertaining to him. We flat. Everything ain't been howdy. Some days it's been cloudy. So we need to reflect on his goodness, reflect on his mercy, renew this relationship, and redirect, if in case we've got thrown off track, redirect our lives, rededicate our lives to him. And it is during this time that those of us who have joined in covenant with our Elohim, we endeavor to become a new creation. Having bread during this time, which is what we just talked about, that deals with the leaven in our life. Let's turn to Exodus chapter 12. Let's pick it up around verse 12. Exodus, the 12th chapter. If y'all still with me, say I'm still with you, because I know y'all will crash out. I know you will get sleepy. The word will put you to sleep. And then when you put a boring voice like mine, you really be ready to crash. If you're with me, say I'm still with you. Okay, Keisha's still with me. Josh Briscoe's still with me. Celine's still with me. Okay, so Exodus chapter 12. Miss Diane said she's still with me. Exodus chapter 12, we're going to pick it up around verse 12. Exodus 12. Look what it says. Y'all ready? Exodus 12 says, "For I will pass through the land of Egypt this night." This is Yah talking. "And I will smite all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, both man and beast. And against all the gods of Egypt, I will execute judgment. I am Yahuwah." Verse 13, "And the blood shall be to you for a token upon the houses where ye are. And when I see the blood, I will pass over you, and the plague shall not be open to destroy you when I smite the land of Egypt." So we know the Israelites were to put the blood on the doorpost, top of the mantle, on the sides. And Yah says, when I see the blood, I know me and you in covenant. We rocking. You're listening to me. You're with me. And I will pass over you. Mercy will pass over you while I'm on my way to do damage to the Egyptians. Verse 14, "In this day shall be unto you for a memorial, and ye shall keep it as a feast to Yahuwah throughout your generations. Ye shall keep it a feast by ordinance for how long? Forever." That means even now, forever. Verse 15, pay attention. "7 days shall ye eat unleavened bread. Even the first day ye shall put away leaven out of your house. For whosoever eats leavened bread from the first day until the 7th day, that soul shall be cut off from Israel." Remember last week we talked about the importance of hearing him and obeying him. It's vital to our health. Now look what it says. Wait a minute. So remember, the Passover was observed on the 14th day of the first month, with the service beginning in the evening. That's significant. It began in the evening. It was in the evening of this day that Israel left Egypt. And so Passover commemorated this departure from Egypt in haste. They left in haste. So unleavened bread was used in the celebration because it showed that our people had no time to put leaven in their bread. They had to leave quick, fast, in the hurry. So they had no time to put leaven in their bread as they ate their final meal as slaves in Egypt. So we know that the regulation was to remove all the yeast, all of the leaven from their homes, and neither could they eat it for 7 days. Now we know that yeast is a rising agent. That's how it functions. Yeast it's a rising agent. It causes the bread to rise. It stops your biscuits from being flat. Matter of fact, that's how you know when they done. But symbolically, the leaven also represents sin, which is also a rising agent. Sin always takes you further than you expected to go, keeps you longer than you want it to stay, and costs you more than you want it to pay. It's a rising agent. Sin rises up in our hearts in so many ways, and we are to remove not only the physical leaven from the house, but we are to remove the leaven from our hearts. So we are to remove the leaven from our homes, and we're also to remove it from our hearts. If there is anything in you that rises up against Torah, that rises up against his kingdom, that rises up against his covenant, if there's anything like that rising up in you, it has to go. So if there's anger in your heart, which rises up against Torah, it has to go. If there is envy in your heart, which rises up against Torah, it has to go. If there is sexual immorality in your heart, which rises up every time you walk through Walmart, then that means there's leaven in you that has to be thrown out. Whatever it is that's in your heart that rises up in rebellion to Yahuwah has to be confronted and dealt with. Am I making sense to anybody? That bad attitude that rises up every time somebody says something you don't like. Gotta go. Gotta go. Has to be confronted. Has to be dealt with. So you see how keeping the feast is a process. It's a work. It's a work of transformation in your life. But if you go through the process that Yah uses, if you keep the feast, it is a process that Yah uses to prepare you to come into his presence. Which is why learning about the feast and the laws and the statutes and the commandments and making them a part of our lives is so important. So after rededication and reflection and renewal, we should want to rid ourselves of those sinful things that keep us unclean. Have I put y'all to sleep? We should want to remove ourselves from those things that keep us unclean and unworthy to be in his presence, much less as a living sacrifice. Let's turn to 1 Corinthians chapter 5. Let's go to 1 Corinthians chapter 5. Let's pick it up around verse 1. Now pay attention to this conversation. This is about, remember, we're talking about removing the leaven from the house, whether it's your home, your heart, your place of assembly, remove it. Look what it says. 1 Corinthians chapter 5, pick it up at verse 1. Look what Paul, it is reported commonly. Let me read that again. It is reported commonly that there is fornication among you. Stop right there. You got to let that sink in, because we miss a lot of stuff. Don't look, we talking about removing the leaven. And we just said sexual immorality is a rising agent that gets to acting a fool every time you walk into the mall. Look what it says. Look what it says. Paul says to this assembly, it is reported. In other words, y'all the talk of the town. Commonly, this is a common thing. Y'all, all people know. They know that there is fornication, and I ain't got to tell y'all what that is, among you, and such fornication as is not so much as named among the Gentiles. Well, we know who he ain't talking to. He ain't talking to the Gentiles, because he just said, look what he just said. Look what he just said. So much as named among, wait a minute, let me back up. That there is fornication among you, and such fornication as is not so much as named among the Gentiles. Uh-oh, he talking to us. He said, Gentiles ain't even doing what y'all doing. That one should have his father's wife. That's uncovering his father's nakedness. This is what the scriptures mean by, so this goes against Torah. There it goes. It's rising again in rebellion to Torah. And that, if loving you is wrong, I don't want to be right. I used to sing that. It'll get you sent straight to hell. If loving you is wrong, get the hell away from me. I got to be right. You or loving, I got to get out of my heart. Listen to what he said. Verse 2, and ye are puffed up and have not rather mourned about this situation, that he that have done this deed might be taken away from among you, that he might, the leaven has to go. In other words, instead of walking around puffed up and acting like everything is cool, you need to get that leaven out the house. Not just the man with his father's wife, but all the fornication that's going on in the house that's commonly known about this assembly. That is a rising agent, that fornication. And all it takes is a little bit of leaven, sport a whole load. So he said, get it out. Look at verse 3. For I verily, as absent in the body, but present in spirit, have judged already, as though I were present, concerning him, that boy, that has done this deed. Verse 4, in the name of our King, Yahushua HaMashiach, when ye are gathered together and in my spirit, with the power of Yahushua HaMashiach, to deliver such a one unto Satan for the destruction of the flesh, that the spirit might be saved. You know, it's a terrible thing when Yah says turn you over to Satan, that the spirit might be saved, because he knows Satan gonna work you over. He gonna whoop you real good. You're gonna be crawling back to Yah, talking about let me in, let me in. He said, turn them over to Satan. Before you let that fester in this out, turn them over to Satan. You can't have him for good, but turn him over that he may be saved if he come to his senses in the day of King Yahushua. Look at verse 6. Your glorying is not good. Know ye not that a little leaven leaveneth the whole lump? So we don't get to pick and choose which sin we get to keep and what sin we got to let go. Do you hear what I'm saying? If there is anything in us that rises up in rebellion against Torah and the kingdom, it has to be purged. Am I making any sense? Yes. It has to be purged. Look at the next verse. Verse 7 says, purge out. See, I ain't making this up. Purge out, therefore, the old leaven, that ye may be a new lump, as ye are unleavened. For even Hamashiach, our Passover, is sacrificed for us. I'm going to read that again. It says, purge out, therefore, the old leaven, that you may be a new lump, How is that? Because you know what? Since you got the unleavened out your house, you got the unleavened out your life, now you are unleavened. For men, for Hamashiach. It says, for even Hamashiach, our Passover, is sacrificed for us. Verse 8, therefore, let us not keep the feast, not with old leaven, neither with the leaven of malice, told you, gotta go, and wickedness, told you, gotta go, but with unleavened bread of sincerity and truth. So once we put these things down, we are not to go back and pick them up again. Once unleavened week is over, we are not to go back and pick up these things that we've been consecrated and separated from. But we are to keep walking with Yah daily and study the Torah, which is his word, daily, and practice it daily. And what will happen is you will look up and your mind will begin to become renewed. And your life will transform more and more into the image and likeness of our King. I'm talking about a work of transformation in your life, which is holy and acceptable and the perfect will of Yah. So getting back to Romans chapter 12, verse 2, verse 2, I done talked all this and we only got to verse 2. I apologize. No, I don't. Let's get to verse 2. It says, and be not conformed to this world. You know, now that there's been a renewal, now that there's been a reflection and a rededication, and now that there's been a purging, and the mind is starting to be renewed, we are to no longer pattern ourselves or think like or respond like the world does. But we are to be transformed. We got to continue the process by the renewing of our mind, that we may prove what is that good and acceptable, perfect will of Yah. Now, we need to understand that a renewed mind is not an indoctrinated mind. Paul's not talking about an indoctrinated mind when he's talking about a renewed mind. He's not talking about a mind that is taking on someone else's beliefs and customs and made it their own without any critical thought. But a mind that is not ashamed of the truth. Do you hear what I'm saying? He's talking about a mind that is not ashamed of the truth while purging the lie. We don't need the type of mind that is ashamed of the truth while embracing the lie, but we need a mind that will embrace the truth and purge the lie. He's not talking about a Baptist mind. He's not talking about an apostolic mind. He's not talking about a Pentecostal mind or a Catholic mind or an AME mind. He's talking about a mind of Torah. Calm down, Jeffrey. I'm trying. He's not talking about a mind of churchianity. But he's talking about a mind that is being saturated in Torah. And think, when something is saturated, when you're saturated, like putting a piece of cloth in water, it's saturated through and through. That's the type of mind. One that is saturated in Torah. That's why David, who had a mind that was saturated in Torah, said, I'm going to meditate in his word both day and night, and he shall be like a tree planted by the rivers of water and will bring forth fruit in its season. His leaf also shall not wither. Let me go on. I get carried away. Calm down, Jeffrey. It takes a mind that has been renewed by Torah to produce the type of fruit that Yah is looking for. And when you think about all the preaching that's going on across this nation, you know it's rotten fruit because it's not producing a righteous change in this country. Preaching goes on in pulpit after pulpit, week after week, month after month, year after year. But look at the fruit that is producing in our nation. Rotten fruit. Rotten fruit. So a renewed mind is not an indoctrinated mind. We don't need more of indoctrination. We need more of transformation, which means we need more people willing to work the process. This race is not given to the swift, neither the battle to the strong, but to the one that endures until the end. We need a mind that is saturated in Torah. For the record is to let this mind be in you, which was also in Yahushua HaMashiach. It takes a change of heart and a change of mind to keep up with him. And I know I'm right about it because he says, if any man will come after me, let him first deny himself. Take up his cross, take up his execution stake, and follow me. And he also said that I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man comes to the Father but by me. So if we expect to make it to the kingdom, we got to deal with the spots and the blemishes. We got to consecrate ourselves. We got to rededicate ourselves. If we're going to be a living sacrifice, that means we must be saturated in Yah's word. Real quick, I'm going to let y'all go, but let's turn to Psalm 119. Psalm 119. Let's go to Psalm 119. Psalm 119. Let's go to Psalm 119 and let's pick it up. Let's pick it up in verse 1. Psalm 119. And this ought to immediately take your mind to the Aleph. The Aleph, which means the champion, the leader, the head of the house. He's the head of the covenant. Look what David said. Blessed are the undefiled in the way. Peep that. Blessed are the undefiled in the way, who walk in the Torah of Yahuwah. Blessed are they that keep his testimonies and that seek him with the whole heart. They also do no iniquity. They walk in his way. Thou hast commanded us to keep thy precepts diligently. Oh, that my ways were directed to keep thy statutes. Then shall I not be ashamed when I have respect unto all thy commandments. I will praise thee with uprightness of heart. When I shall have learned thy righteous judgments, I will keep thy statutes. Oh, forsake me not utterly. That's a man whose mind was saturated in Torah. That's a man who knew what it meant to renew, reflect, and rededicate his life to Yahuwah. That was a man who had sin problems himself, but was willing to get that leaven out of his life. And one thing we can say about David, Yah blessed David. In spite of David's downfall, David died with no enemies. David died with no enemies. And I would love to be able to experience that without be able to die with no haters, no enemies, but peace in my life. So as we keep the feast days, remember, by going through the process, it prepares you to be in his presence. And now that we've been rededicated and we're a new creation and we've gotten rid of those things that rises up against Yah, we're now ready to present our first fruit. Because Yahushua, he was our first fruit offering. Y'all know he was wounded for our transgressions, bruised for our iniquities. The chastisement of our peace was upon him, and by his stripes we are healed. He died. He gave up that blood. He shed his blood. It was a messy deal, but somebody had to do it. He shed his blood. He went through the process that you and I might have life and learn to have it more abundantly. So let us keep our mind and our hearts focused on Yahuwah as we finish out these last few days of unleavened bread. And just remember, as long as Yah is the main focus in your life, you ain't got to worry about straying to the right or to the left. Everything you do, consult with him, and he will direct your path. Satan thought he won that battle. They laid him down in another man's tomb, but 3 days and 3 nights later, he got up with all power in his hands. And because he got the power, we got the power. And with that, I say, Yah bless you. Thank you for joining in with me. Hope y'all got something out of this message. If it wasn't too boring and you received the message and you believe the message, please be brave enough to share the message. They need to know. It needs to get out. We're preparing for the return of our King. And even though these are just small steps, those small steps are big things. We are preparing for our King. Thank you. God bless you. Hey, don't forget, for those of you who wants to send in your first fruit offering, as well as the offering that we bought the other day for Passover, on top of your regular offering, this is the time to do it. We want to be obedient. Let's do our due diligence to be obedient in what Yah has commanded us to do. And I just love doing it. I get energy out of keeping the Shabbat. And there's nothing like walking through the house and seeing your family on the Shabbat in one piece, taken care of, no complaints. Yah is good. But thank you. Yah bless you. I won't keep y'all anymore today. Thank you, Justified, for your support. Remember, if you receive the message and you believe the message, share the message. Shalom, shalom. Love you all.